The biggest sleeper for the 2024 fantasy football season based on ADP has to be Jake Ferguson, who is consistently being drafted in the later half of the mid rounds, barely even breaking into the top 10 in ADP at the position. And I'm not gonna lie, the Cowboys offseason has been super strange to me this year, but it's actually been a massive W for all of the pass catching options behind CeeDee Lamb because they didn't add anyone despite losing Michael Gallup and Tony Pollard, who both combined for nearly 130 vacated targets. Not to mention that I would not at all be shocked if the Cowboys threw the ball 650 to 700 times this year because they probably won't have a quality run game. So those 130 vacated targets could turn into 180, 200 total targets just up for grabs from last year to this year. So for a player like Jake Ferguson, who was already one of 7 tight ends last year, to see over 100 targets, I don't think it's unlikely for him to see closer to 120 or more like Sam LaPorta, David Njoku, TJ Hawkinson, all of those other tight ends had in 2023. And with that increase in raw targets, based on what Ferguson already did last year, we could be looking at 80 plus receptions, 900 receiving yards, 6 to 7 touchdowns. I mean, that's effectively what David Njoku did last year as the tight end 5 overall. And any more production on top of that, and he'd enter the TJ Hawkinson, Travis Kelce range of production as top 4 fantasy tight ends. Or again, worst case scenario, he just repeats what he did last year as the second option in the receiving game, catch 70 passes, 750 yards, a handful of touchdowns. He's a quality every week starter as a top 10 guy at the position, which is actually exactly where you drafted him. So if I'm not able to grab an elite tight end early, I will wait for Jake Ferguson to be my starting tight end. I would rather have him than Evan Ingram and David Njoku, and Ferguson is going anywhere from 1 to 3 rounds later than both of those guys. It's really a no-brainer to me that Jake Ferguson is your best bet if you miss out on tight ends early. Before we move on, I wanted to let y'all know to head over to 4for4.com and sign up for a subscription today to gain access to the industry's best fantasy rankings from award-winning ranker for accuracy John Paulson. Plus, you get access to our live draft assistant, cheat sheets, trade calculator, articles, and there are additional packages for DFS and betting content too. Make sure to use the code YouTube at checkout to receive 25% off your annual subscription today. All right, now moving on to my breakout candidate, I think it's safe to say that this is the year. This is the year that we get the Kyle Pitts breakout season that we've been waiting for since the end of his rookie year. Everything is lined up in his favor for a breakout 2024 season. He is fully healthy now, 2 years removed from the MCL injury that he suffered in November of 2022, which is very similar to ACL injuries where players don't fully return to pre-injury production numbers until year 2. We see it all the time with running backs, and Kyle Pitts is no different, and it explains a lot in regards to a down 2023 season. Which, speaking of a down 2023, statistically it was rough when you're looking at just his counting stats, but analytically, Kyle Pitts continues to operate within elite tight end ranges that just scream breakout season. I mean, he was first in route participation among all tight ends last year, first in snap percentage out wide, third in snap percentage in the slot, second in yards per reception, first in average depth of target, first in air yards market share, and here's the real kicker, last in catchable pass rate, meaning he saw the fewest number of targets that were deemed actually catchable among all tight ends last year. So he was doing all of that while injured, catching passes from Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke in a horrendous Arthur Smith offense. Imagine what he'll do fully healthy with Kirk Cousins, one of the most accurate passers in the league over the last few years, in a brand new McVay-style offense under Zach Robinson. Oh, and he is still just 23 years old despite entering his 4th year in the league. The stage is completely set for Kyle Pitts to have his breakout season that everyone has been hoping for, not just by returning to his 2021 rookie form, but an actual difference-making positional advantage league winner. And the best part is, since everyone's been burned by him for 2 years in a row, a lot of people are out on him for redraft. He is routinely being found in the 6th or even 7th rounds of your drafts as the 7th or 8th tight end off the board. That is incredible value for a player that can easily finish as a tight end 1 in fantasy this year, allowing you to stack studs at running back and wide receiver early, and then grab a home run swinging Kyle Pitts in the mid rounds. I mean, sign me up. And then finally, we have to talk about my bust candidate for 2024, and I don't want this to be taken the wrong way because I think he's going to be solid this year, but when I draft Sam LaPorta as the tight end 1 off the board in the 2nd or 3rd round of drafts, I'm not looking for just solid. I'm looking for a difference maker at the position, and I don't think that Sam LaPorta is that. Again, don't hear what I'm not saying. I think Sam LaPorta is an excellent player and justifiably deserves a top 3 ADP based on what he did last year, but in fantasy, we don't hate the player, we hate the ADP. Last year, LaPorta finished as the tight end 1 overall as a rookie, an absolutely amazing season, and it's fitting that he's going as a tight end 1 off the board, but he didn't do so as a massive difference maker at the position. He did not Travis Kelce everyone and crush the tight end 2 by 5 or more fantasy points per game. In fact, LaPorta wasn't even the tight end 1 last year in fantasy points per game. He was the tight end 3 behind Travis Kelce and TJ Hawkinson, and a half a point above Evan Ingram and Mark Andrews. And this doesn't even include the surge of Trey McBride either over the last half of the year, who scored nearly identically to Sam LaPorta from week 6 on. So LaPorta was effectively no different than a handful of other tight ends last year, not to mention what would actually happen if Kyle Pitts does actually break out, or Dalton Kincaid takes a huge leap in year 2 as maybe the top target for Josh Allen. And we can't forget about George Kittle either, especially if the Niners do move on from Deebo Samuel or Brandon Ayuk at some point this year, opening up the targets for Kittle even more. There are just so many fantastic tight ends in the league right now that all have the potential to be the tight end 1 overall, so why would I draft any of them first off the board when I can just wait a couple of rounds and grab a different one? It just so happens that Sam LaPorta is the top tight end off the board, so instead of drafting LaPorta in the 2nd or even the early 3rd, why not draft Mark Andrews in the 4th, Trey McBride in the 5th, Pitts or Kincaid in the 6th or even the 7th round, and they all realistically could finish as top 5 tight ends with minimal differences in scoring, but you were able to snag Devon Achane, Travis Etienne, or Devontae Adams at the 2-3 turn instead of banking on Aaron Jones, Zay Flowers, or DeAndre Swift because you drafted Sam LaPorta early. Oh, and as an honorable mention, please do not draft TJ Hawkinson either. He is coming off of an ACL injury that happened in late December, then didn't even have surgery until late January, so he might not even be back until mid to late October at the earliest, possibly even November, like right before Thanksgiving. And when he does come back, is he even going to be effective and produce for you at all off the ACL? It just honestly feels like a wasted pick when you could swing for the fences with guys like Jackson Smith-Njigba or Christian Watson, Xavier Worthy, Brian Thomas Jr., Brock Bowers even at the tight end position, and see if you hit on them versus waiting for half a season for a guy that might not even be good when he gets back.